They laughed at her in the middle of the street, their voices sharp and cruel. A group of younger bullies surrounded an elderly black woman, mocking her for her age, her race, her very presence. They called her too old, too weak, too out of place to even stand among them. She stood still, her back straight, her silence sharper than their words. Behind her calm eyes, there was something unshaken, something the bullies could not see. The crowd watched, torn between pity and fear as the taunts grew louder. Yet she did not bend. What happens when prejudice awakens a strength no one expected? Clara Johnson was a woman who carried herself with quiet dignity. In her late 60s, she lived in a modest home on a quiet street, surrounded by the life she had built with patience and strength. Her garden was her pride, each flower cared for with steady hands. At the market, she greeted vendors warmly, her presence always polite, never demanding. Children in the community knew her as the calm teacher who taught them discipline and respect through small lessons, never raising her voice but always commanding attention. To strangers, however, Clara was often dismissed. Some saw only an elderly black woman, fragile and unimportant. They could not see the discipline in her posture, the way she stood straight no matter how tired she felt. They could not know about the scars across her knuckles, or the box of medals she kept hidden in her bedroom drawer, reminders of a life once lived in strength and service. Her daily walks through the park were her time of peace. The park was always alive with voices, laughter, and the hum of city life. Yet among the crowd, there were three figures who thrived on disruption. Arrogant and loud, the group of younger adults made it a habit to mock those they considered weaker or different. They had no respect, only noise and cruelty. Neighbors often saw their behavior, but no one stepped in. People preferred to look away, pretending it was not their problem. Clara walked that same path, watched by curious eyes, as the arrogant laughter of those three began to rise. The stage for confrontation was quietly being set. The afternoon sun spilled across the park as Clara walked her usual path. Carrying a small bag of groceries, she moved with calm steps, her shoulders squared, her face serene. Suddenly, three figures stepped directly in front of her. The young bullies spread out across the walkway, their smirks sharp and their voices cutting. One sneered, "You are too old to matter. Why are you even out here alone?" Another laughed, mocking her skin, her presence, her dignity. Their words were meant to strip her of worth, and their laughter rang out loud enough for the entire park to hear. Clara stopped. She did not flinch, did not look away. She simply stood, her gaze steady. With false bravado, one bully demanded, "Move out of the way. People like you should know their place." Clara's voice was quiet but clear as she replied, "Respect costs nothing. You should try it." The words only fueled their cruelty. A hand shot out, shoving her bag of groceries from her arms. Apples rolled across the path. Bread crushed beneath careless shoes. The bystanders froze. Phones lifted into the air, recording every second. But no one stepped forward. Some lowered their eyes. Others whispered, unwilling to confront what was happening. Clara bent slightly, her hand steady as she picked up one piece of fruit. She did not curse, did not plead. Her silence pressed against the air like a weight, her calm defiance louder than their insults. The bullies grew bolder, circling her with mocking gestures, expecting her to crumble. Yet her eyes had shifted. They were colder now, sharper, carrying a warning no one around her could quite read. Beneath that silence lay something powerful, something forged in years most people could not imagine. What happens when silence hides decades of training? The three bullies began to circle Clara, as if the park was their stage and she was their chosen target. Their laughter cut through the quiet afternoon, drawing even more attention from the people nearby. Each step they took was filled with mockery, their gestures exaggerated, their arrogance on full display. One leaned closer, his voice dripping with contempt. "What will you do, Grandma? Pray for help." His friends howled with laughter, convinced that they were untouchable. Clara did not move. Her breathing slowed, deep and steady, the kind of rhythm that came from discipline, not fear. Her shoulders remained straight, her chin lifted. She did not beg, she did not tremble. Her eyes followed their movements carefully, not in panic but in precise calculation. Every step they took, every shift of weight, every smirk that twisted across their faces, she measured it all with the quiet patience of someone who had seen far worse. Around them, neighbors and strangers gathered in silence. Whispers carried through the air. A man muttered, "She is too calm." A woman tugged her child closer, sensing something beneath that stillness. They did not know what it was, but they felt it. An edge, a shadow of danger resting in the posture of the woman they assumed was fragile. The bullies mistook her silence for weakness. They puffed up their chests, proud of the scene they were creating, drunk on the sound of their own cruelty. One kicked at the scattered groceries with deliberate contempt, smashing fruit into the dirt. Another shoved his shoulder toward Clara as if daring her to move. Their arrogance grew louder with every second, their laughter sharper, their taunts cutting deeper. Yet Clara's silence did not crack. Her eyes, firm and unblinking, carried the weight of someone who knew exactly when to act and when to wait. The crowd held its breath, sensing a storm they could not yet see. The question burned in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Who truly holds power, the loud or the silent? One of the bullies finally crossed the line. He reached out and clamped his hand around Clara's arm, gripping it roughly as if to prove his control. His laugh rang out across the park, cruel and careless. The second bully lifted his hand, palm open, ready to strike her across the face. The crowd gasped softly, but no one stepped forward. Phone stayed raised, recording, but courage stayed hidden. Clara did not flinch. She did not plead. Instead, her lips parted, and in a voice so calm it cut through the noise, she whispered a single word. Enough. For a moment, the sound seemed to hang in the air. Simple, quiet, final. The bullies looked at each other and erupted into laughter. They bent over, clutching their stomachs, mocking her as though she had just delivered a joke instead of a warning. Enough. That is all you have. One sneered, his face twisted with arrogance. The hand that hovered in the air threatened to fall harder, daring her to resist. But the crowd saw something different. Her stillness had weight. Her eyes did not show fear, but something deeper. Controlled power sharpened by years the bullies could not imagine. A bystander whispered under their breath, "She is not afraid." Why? The words carried into the silence, stirring unease among those watching. The tension thickened, every second stretching like a wire pulled tight, ready to snap. The bullies laughed louder, mistaking her calm for surrender. Yet the atmosphere around them shifted. The arrogance in their movements no longer matched the energy in the air. The audience could feel it, even if the bullies could not. They thought they were hunters, circling an easy target. But the truth was about to strike harder than any of them expected. Prey was about to turn predator. Clara slowly lifted her head, her gaze locking on the bullies with a sharpness that silenced the laughter around her. Her voice cut through the park, steady and commanding. "You chose the wrong woman." The words were not shouted, but their weight carried further than any scream could. For the first time, hesitation flickered in the bullies' eyes. Their grins faltered, if only for a second. From the crowd, an older man's face drained of color. He leaned forward, his eyes widening in recognition. He whispered urgently to the person beside him. "I know her," she served. "She is not just anyone." His voice trembled with both fear and awe. Clara shifted her stance, a subtle movement, but one that transformed everything. Her shoulders squared, her spine straightened, her feet planted firmly on the ground, balanced, unshakable. She no longer stood like a frail elder woman. She radiated the presence of a seasoned fighter. Years of training, years of discipline returned in an instant, etched into every line of her posture. Her breathing slowed, deep and controlled. Her eyes sharpened, scanning every inch of her opponents with cold calculation. The atmosphere shifted again, no longer just tense. It was suffocating. The crowd felt it. The air seemed to thicken, as though something powerful had awakened. The bullies tried to laugh it off. One shook his head, forcing a smirk. "She is bluffing," he said, though his voice wavered. Another stepped closer, shoving his chest out, desperate to prove dominance. Their arrogance pushed them forward, even as their instincts told them to back away. The onlookers grew silent, waiting, their phones raised but their hands trembling. Something was about to happen, and everyone knew it. What happens when arrogance collides with decades of trained discipline? In a blur of motion, Clara moved faster than anyone thought possible. The first bully swung at her with reckless force, but she shifted her weight, caught his arm, and redirected it with precision. His own momentum sent him crashing to the ground, groaning in pain as the crowd gasped in disbelief. The second bully rushed forward, rage replacing reason. Clara's body turned smoothly, her legs snapping out with sharp accuracy. Her foot struck his midsection, and the air left his lungs in a painful gasp as he stumbled back, collapsing onto the grass. His arrogance dissolved into shock, clutching his side as he wheezed on the ground. The third bully froze. His bravado vanished in an instant, replaced by trembling hesitation. His eyes darted to his fallen companions, then back to Clara, who stood unmoved, her stance firm and her gaze unshaken. He could not step forward, and he could not run. Fear had locked him in place. The silence of the crowd broke into gasps, then cheers. Phones captured every second, voices rising in awe. What they had witnessed was not brute strength, but control, speed, and mastery honed over decades. Clara did not advance on the third bully. She lowered her hands slowly, her breathing steady, her presence calm once more. She had no need to strike further. Her point had already been made. She looked at them with quiet authority, her words carrying more weight than any blow. Strength is not about hurting the weak. True power protects. The bullies lay on the ground, humiliated and stripped of arrogance. Their cruelty, once loud and bold, had been silenced completely. Around them, neighbors who once stayed quiet now clapped and cheered, their admiration finally breaking free. Clara stood in the center, not as a victim, but as a protector who had chosen restraint over destruction. The park slowly grew quiet again as Clara bent down and began gathering her scattered groceries. Her movements were calm, unshaken, each item picked up with dignity. A few neighbors who had stood frozen before now rushed to help, their faces heavy with guilt for staying silent earlier. Together they lifted her bag and offered her respect they had once withheld. The bullies did not speak. They crawled away slowly, their pride shattered, not by broken bones but by the weight of their own humiliation. Their arrogance had been crushed by restraint, and they knew it. The crowd no longer looked at Clara as an old woman, but as a figure of discipline and strength. It was not her martial arts alone that commanded their admiration, but her composure, her refusal to use power for cruelty. Her quiet lesson lingered in the air. True authority is never found in mockery or oppression. It exists in defending dignity and standing firm for justice without seeking destruction. Justice was served. But if you stood in her place, would you have shown mercy or punishment?